Welcome back to the program, Dan Graziano. If you watch ESPN, and of course you do in the morning for Get Up, he's all over the place. Dan, we had you on a couple weeks ago. I checked ESPN.com a couple days ago. You had the main story on the site looking at the entire league, and it's finally here after 6+ months of waiting. The start of the NFL season. You're in the U.S. We're in London. It's so great to see you again, talk to you again. How's it going, Dan?
Going great. Yeah, it's here. It's amazing. I'm making plans to go to Washington D.C. this weekend to see the Giants and the Commanders, and so yeah, we're in regular season mode all of a sudden.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned the Giants, mentioned the Commanders. We're in the NFC East, and there's no team that's dominating the news right now. I feel like more than the Chiefs, more than the Super Bowl champion Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys, and Jerry Jones, and whatever you want to call America's team, not America's team, the gambler. He's all over Netflix. They're all over the NFL.
hmm
And the first time we talked to you a couple weeks ago, you were dead on. We tweeted this at talkSPORT. We wrote about this at talkSPORT.com. We tweeted this at talkSPORT USA. You can follow all of our social media accounts at talkSPORT USA for Facebook and Twitter and our YouTube page. It has 1,000 videos on it that keeps expanding. And Dan, you went into detail for Micah Parsons, how basically Micah Parsons had to call their bluff, and the only way he would have leverage, get back leverage, is to sit out games. And he didn't have the opportunity to do that because all of a sudden he's a Green Bay Packer and he's traded. And Jerry Jones says that the Cowboys are going to be better because of this. And we can debate that later. I think it's very interesting that people have kind of noticed that a lot of Cowboys players, some players came out during it and said, we want him there. And I remember during training camp, you had CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. You had some, defenders with him. But maybe I'm wrong here. I didn't hear a lot from Dak Prescott during this process. Where do you think things stand with Dak Prescott, his recent comments? And was Micah Parsons not liked by the Cowboys? I mean, are there Cowboys players who are glad that this drama is over?
I don't think they're glad that he's gone because he was their best player, and it's going to be harder to win without him. But I don't know that it was like. He's a lot comes with Micah. Like there was,
Yeah.
he has his own podcast. He comments on all kinds of things on social. He famously did like a podcast where he listed the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, and he didn't include Dak Prescott. So I think it's possible that some of his sort of antics and behaviors, might have rubbed some people in the organization the wrong way. I'm sure he has friends in the locker room, but I think this training camp wore on them a lot. Him coming out and one day with no shoes on,
Yeah.
lying on the training table during the game. I think there was a lot going on, and I think the organization ultimately just decided, we just want to be rid of this and get back some picks, and we just don't want to get involved in this long term because we thought we had a deal. They, again, from the Cowboys' perspective, they felt like Micah and his agent went back on the deal that he negotiated with Jerry Jones. But yeah, they just got to a point, whether they were convinced he wasn't going to play for them or whether they just decided it had all become too much. They just made a decision last week to go ahead and move on and be done with it.
Where do you think things stand between the Cowboys and Dak Prescott specifically, to where this time last season he gets his money, highest paid quarterback in NFL history in terms of average annual value. Major injury. He's 32. He was also receiving serious MVP votes just a couple years ago, but hasn't delivered in the playoffs. There's always, it's like Dak Prescott over here and Dak Prescott over here. Where do you think things stand with the Cowboys and Dak Prescott, and how long does he have to still be their franchise quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, the contract tells the story, and he's got $40 million in guaranteed money for next year, and his guarantees kind of they roll out a year early. So next March, his $45 million, or off the top of my head, I think it's $45 million for 2027 becomes guaranteed. So it would be difficult to move on from him, even if they wanted to. I don't think they do want to. Again, the contract tells the story, and they are committed to him. So yeah, I think Dak Prescott, and then they signed CeeDee Lamb long term, his top receiver. They traded for another receiver this offseason in George Pickens. They constantly address the offensive line in the draft. Like, they want to make sure that the situation around Dak Prescott is a good one, but they view him as their quarterback, and he, he's signed long term, and I think he views himself as their quarterback. And I don't ever get the sense from anyone there that that there's anything but a long term commitment both ways.
NFL 2025 season starts this week, Thursday night, Friday night, Sunday night, Monday night. On paper, one of the best games, and it should be incredible. Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills, MVP Josh Allen, almost MVP, former MVP Lamar Jackson. I look at both these guys. When I rank my top quarterbacks, they're at near the top. They're both missing one thing, Dan. They're missing a Super Bowl trophy. They're missing a ring. Who do you think needs it more? You have the Bills Mafia, and you have the Bills, and the Four Falls of Buffalo, and Jim Kelly, and all of that. Then you have Lamar Jackson, who is the greatest dual threat quarterback potentially of all time, who's fallen short in the playoffs. Who needs a Super Bowl trophy more between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, you talk about the players. Obviously, you talk about the city. Obviously, Buffalo is more starved for it. But I would say Lamar Jackson, because it's a flip of the coin. But the reason I say Lamar Jackson is you talk about dual threat. The commentary on Lamar Jackson since before he was drafted was about, can you win with a quarterback who plays this style? Yeah. Is he going to evolve as a pocket passer to a great enough extent that he can deliver at a high level and win you championships? So if he were to win the Super Bowl, then I think there's nothing anyone can ever say again, right? You can now say, yeah, you can win. Maybe he's special. Maybe you can't usually win with a guy like that, but he's that good. Or maybe you need, and by you, I mean the NFL. Maybe the NFL needs to start thinking about these things a little differently. So I think that would be, they both need it. They both need to get past Patrick Mahomes. But I would say Lamar Jackson in answer to your question.
Dan Graziano, NFL Insider. We'll have him out every couple of weeks on talkSPORT at talkSPORT.com, talkSPORT USA, all of our social media channels. And we're going to have a historic number of games broadcast live at talkSPORT throughout the NFL year, all the way from the playoffs, the Super Bowl. So we're just getting started here. Dan, we're kind of going through the opening week. As I'm prepping for the show today and just checking, is there anything I'm missing news-wise? I see Tyreek Hill's name pop up. He's not a captain for the Miami Dolphins, which is an interesting move. And when I'm thinking about the Chiefs, I look at their depth charts and good wide receivers, but I still feel like they're missing a one. And obviously you have Rashee Rice in the suspension. Yeah. You have Hollywood Brown. You have Juju Smith-Schuster. They have talent, but I feel like they've never been able to truly replace Tyreek Hill, and still they've won at a high level. Yeah. Why do you think they've struggled? When you have Mahomes, you have Kelsey, you have Andy Reid, that they just haven't been able to truly fix their wide receiver room?
Yeah, I think they made a decision when they moved on from Tyreek Hill that they did not want to pay him at the level that they saw wide receiver contracts getting to, this $30+ million a year range. And there are teams, they're not the only ones, that look at that as too much to pay for a wide receiver. There's 7 or 8 of them coming out in the draft every year. You can find that help. So it may be that they, and by the way, with what they pay their quarterback, with what they pay, their tight end, with what they pay their defensive tackle, Chris Jones, there's not a ton of salary cap room left over to stretch at wide receiver. So I think that's probably the reason, just sort of a philosophical choice that they've made. And they also believe, obviously, their quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, can elevate whoever's around him. The proof of that is after they got rid of Tyreek Hill, they've been to 3 straight Super Bowls and won 2 of them.
Dan, we're going to put you on the spot here at talkSPORT because, we love to be serious, but we also love to have fun. We're wondering, because you hear a lot, right? There are so many rumors, there's so many trades, there's so much dysfunction on top of all the positive things that happen in the NFL. We're wondering, though, Micah Parsons, Tyreek Hill, players, trades, what's the biggest trade that you've heard that almost happened, was being talked about, but didn't actually happen, or that, even if it's not the biggest name in the world, that people just don't really know that's out there?
Oh, geez. You mean like a trade talks that happened that weren't reported?
Or just kind of uncovered or deserved more attention, or.
Geez.
I guess we're really putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah,
I think
yeah,
sometimes like there
I
was
gotta think about that
when
one.
I, when
Get
I
back to me on that one.
when I covered the
Yeah.
Texans, people don't know that at one point the Texans were actually very, very serious about trading a ton for Jameis Winston. You look back now, you're like, why the heck would they done that? They ended up getting
Oh
Deshaun
wow,
Watson.
yeah.
That didn't work out. They found CJ Stroud. Or just anyone who maybe was going to move up big time in the draft for a quarterback
Yeah.
for a number one pick that just didn't happen in the end.
I mean, I go back to 2020 when Joe Burrow was coming out off that huge season at LSU, and
Yeah,
the Bengals got calls from teams about the pick. The Miami Dolphins were picking fifth, ended up with Tua Tagovailoa. I remember hearing that they were very interested in trying to go up because everybody wanted Burrow at that point. They thought he was the standout and he was special. Even the guys that ended up, even the teams that ended up with Justin Herbert and Tua and all those guys. The next year, there was, the Bengals again, they were picking fourth and there were teams trying to go up and get ahead of them to get Jamar Chase, who they had their eye on at four. So yeah, I think that's the draft. There was a lot of complicated aspects of the draft in 2023, the Bryce Young, C.J.
yeah,
Stroud
yeah.
year. There were teams that and Anthony Richardson. There were teams that were kind of trying to finagle their way up, but it depended, right? If the Texans hadn't taken Stroud at 2. I believe, if memory serves, Arizona had the third pick, and there were teams that were going to try and go up to get Arizona's pick and take Stroud there. I think Seattle was one of them, and maybe Tennessee. So those are the ones that jumped. I think Arizona did end up trading that pick to Houston.
Yeah,
And
they took
for Will Anderson.
which
Yeah,
reset their defense.
yeah,
Very,
yeah,
very interesting.
absolutely. So.
All right, so it's that time of the year, start of the NFL season. We'll have everything covered at talkSPORT. And the second you start playing real games, that means someone could be fired, right? We've seen that more and more in the NFL. Out of all the 32 coaches, Dan, you hear Mike McDaniel's name mentioned. We saw changes last year across the board. I think of the Raiders. I mean, at one point, the Raiders had to have Antonio Pierce be their head coach, and then they moved on and had Pete Carroll. No one was predicting that a year ago.
No.
Which of the 32 coaches is under the most pressure, is truly on the hot seat right now as week one begins?
I mean, look, you mentioned the number one name that people outside like to bring up is Miami and Mike McDaniel, but don't clip that.
Don't take it out of context.
I've never heard from inside their building that they're dissatisfied with him. So he did a contract extension last offseason. So he may be on more solid ground than you think. It depends. It depends. How's it going to go? Brian Daboll with the Giants is a guy that I think people point to. But the drafting of Jackson Dart in the first round maybe gives him, that's his project. That's his guy. So maybe they give him a little more time, even if they don't have success this year. Like, where could it go badly? Like, would Cincinnati do it if they had a bad year?
Yeah.
I mean, their last two seasons have been bad, but they've been 9-8, right? They're competitive, and if they fix the defense, they feel like they. But if they were to underachieve, you'd start to hear that kind of chatter. I think. I don't know. Tennessee, he's only in his second year, and he just got his quarterback, so he's probably safe. But I think that's the early sort of scorecard on that stuff.
So you can Dan Graziano, NFL Insider for talkSPORT. Another interesting game this week. Caleb Williams, the start of year 2 with Chicago. A lot of hope for Bears fans. A lot of question marks. You bring in Ben Johnson. Very, very smart offensive mind. But this is his first shot to run a team, and we see that a lot. You bring in a great offensive mind or a great defensive mind. Doesn't always work out once you're actually on the sideline having to deal with everything on and off the field. Where do you think things stand right now with Caleb Williams within the Bears? Because there was that report that came out during the offseason that going into the draft, Caleb didn't want to go to the Bears, and I think his dad was involved. And we've moved on from that. But as we begin week one in the NFL 2025 season, Dan, where does Caleb Williams stand with the fan base and within the organization?
I think the fan base is very hopeful on Caleb Williams and probably will have, I think, more patience with him, even if he I think they'll wave off last year as kind of a lost year, unfortunately, and give Ben Johnson a chance to build him back up. What we've heard from Chicago's camp is that Ben Johnson has coached the team and coached Caleb Williams hard, trying to make it difficult on him and see how much he can take. And then you get to the season, you dial it back, and you figure, oh, he's comfortable with this. We can lean into this. But there's a lot of stuff. I mean, like there is taking a snap from under center, turning your back to the defense, like stuff he didn't really do a lot in college. So there's fundamental technique aspects of his game that have needed refining. So I think we're all eager to see, especially against Brian Flores coached Minnesota Vikings defense is so good at disguising its pressures and coverages, that how he handles that on Monday night. That's a great game because we haven't seen J.J. McCarthy at all in an NFL game, and he'll be the young starter on the other side of the ball. So yeah, I think it's but with Caleb Williams, definitely Ben Johnson sees it as his mission to coach him hard and set the standard high, and then build off of that. People I've talked to who have worked with Ben Johnson insist that it's not going to be another offensive coordinator who got promoted, couldn't handle the big job, that he's got special qualities. And so we'll see. We'll all find out together.
Start of NFL season, also the start of college football season. We won't talk top 25 or the college football playoff, but Deion Sanders, Colorado loses its first game without Shedeur Sanders, without Travis Hunter. We talked about Travis Hunter last week and playing two ways, and that'll be fascinating to watch. But I'd love to get your perspective. Did Deion blow his best shot at being an NFL head coach? Because he just lost two of the best players in college football. And if he goes below 500, I mean, no one's coming after him this year. He was a huge hot name. Do you think he ever coaches the NFL, or is his window closed?
I think he'd have to have higher level college success than he's had in order to be that an NFL head coach candidate. I think his name came up a couple different places last year,
partly with the Cowboys, right? But it was kind of thrown out there.
And I don't think it's any coincidence that he shortly thereafter got a contract extension from Colorado, right? Like that may have been part of the plan. I think if he were to have success, because he's been a program builder, right? He went to Jackson State and built that up, and he went to Colorado and built it up into something more certainly than it was when he got there. So NFL teams look for that. Now, it's Deion Sanders. He knows the NFL. It's a big splash hire if you were to make it, but I don't hear a ton on that. I think in order to get on that radar screen in a meaningful way, he probably has to win at a fairly high level at Colorado.
Pivot slightly from Deion Sanders to his son Shedeur, who is officially number 3 on the depth chart. We talked about this during our first interview. I mean, he is a 5th round pick, and your 5th round pick, you're 3rd on the depth chart. That's not shocking. Where do you think it stands right now with Shedeur as we go into week 1? And what are you hearing just about the Browns and their quarterback situation and the team? Because we mentioned coaches that could be fired. A rough year for Kevin Stefanski. He's also had a lot of success. He's been one of the best coaches in the NFL in terms of awards. But the league changes very quickly. Where do you think it stands with Shedeur right now? And if Cleveland has a really bad year, I mean, could there be changes with the Browns?
2-time coach of the year, just got extended recently. Look, I think he's solid. Sometimes the year goes so poorly that ownership decides to make changes for the sake of making changes. But, I think they're in a situation where they're obviously in a transition phase at quarterback. They have 2 first-round picks next year. I think the organization is thinking long-term with Kevin Stefanski and the GM, Andrew Berry. You never obviously know. We can never predict what the billionaire will ultimately do when it comes time to decide these things. But similar to what I said with Mike McDaniel, I've never heard any dissatisfaction with Kevin Stefanski in that building. And again, 2-time coach of the year. At quarterback right now, he's going with Joe Flacco, and then the 2 rookies are behind him on the depth chart. We saw Shedeur Sanders look very good in the first preseason game that he played. We saw him look very overwhelmed in the second preseason game he played, and I think that's all fair. He is a rookie. He's a work in progress. The Browns are happy with the progress that he's making, but they don't feel it's to the point where they can put him in a game as a starter. Might that come down the road? Of course. Dylan Gabriel was taken 2 rounds earlier, and my sense of it would be that if Flacco were to get injured or to falter, that Gabriel would get the first crack at it ahead of Sanders, based on, again, they obviously thought more highly of him. They took him 2 rounds earlier. So they both have a lot to work on, as they showed in their preseason action. But the Browns do enter the season with that as their depth chart. So if something were to happen to Flacco against the Bengals on Sunday, one of those guys is going to have to play. Again, my sense of it is they would assess Dylan Gabriel as more ready to go right now in that situation, but things do change quickly with these rookies.
A couple more for Dan Graziano, NFL insider from ESPN. Just rolling through all the big topics for Week 1. You can follow everything from us at talkSPORT USA, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube channel. Dan, where can they find you on Twitter, man?
Oh, it's Dan Graziano, ESPN. I got to start doing that more. maybe with the new season starting, I'll get back onto that.
There we go. A team that has had constant change, but could be an interesting team this year. The Jacksonville Jaguars. They have the London connection.
Oh, yeah.
Dan, you've spent time around this team. You bring in Liam Cohen. You bring in a very young, inexperienced, but interesting general manager. You have Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, who could be in a bit of a make or break year. What are you hearing about the Jaguars? And could this be a team where all of a sudden it magically clicks and that we're talking about the Jaguars in a good way again in terms of weekly NFL news?
I think it's possible, if Liam Cohen is the kind of coach that they think he is, that it could turn quickly. There's talent on the roster. There's some places where they have question marks. The offensive line still has some question marks. Is there like an elite player there that can kind of be an anchor on that offensive line? I'm not sure they've found that guy just yet. The defense needs to be better, obviously, but there's some pieces back, especially on the back end and then up front with the two young edge rushers. They have an incredibly young group of wide receivers around Trevor Lawrence. And I think that's, as everybody learned the offense this offseason, I think that was taken into account. Time on task with Trevor Lawrence, and even with Brian Thomas, who he was throwing to last year, they're learning the new offense together. So I think it's probably a year or two early to expect that from Jacksonville. Again, never know. Mm-hmm. Liam Cohen could be a genius and take this thing to the next level right away. But they probably need another offseason to maybe address, the offensive line and maybe some spots on the defense and get them, new coach, new GM. Sometimes you need that first season to get a sense of like, well, here's what we still do need. And here's the way we need to tinker. But it should be exciting. Brian Thomas is a legit, star wide receiver, and Travis Hunter, we can't wait to see how they're going to use him and how much on offense, how much on defense. But a special player can do special things whenever he is on the field.
Travis Hunter could be the coolest story in the NFL after Week 1. Hopefully he stays healthy. He plays both ways. Last one for you, Dan. A new set of rules came out this week, apparently, the revised Tom Brady rules. We're wondering at talkSPORT, is there, I've written about the conflict of interest. I mean, it's been covered. Personally, I don't love it. I can't believe it's allowed, but it is being allowed. And Tom Brady is Tom Brady. When you talk to, league GMs, when you talk to executives, when you talk to coaches, players on and on, how do they really feel about Tom Brady's role with the Raiders, and Tom Brady also being one of the biggest, if not the biggest announcers in the NFL? I think it's really weird. I do. And I love Brady, and I've written a billion great things about Brady. And I see Brady wearing Raiders gear while he's calling it for Fox. And it just looks weird to me. I don't remember John Madden doing that or anyone else, but it's Tom Brady. Where do things really stand inside the NFL from that perspective?
It's funny. I think you're like me, right? You have these sort of almost outdated journalistic sensibilities, right? Like where the boundaries are supposed to be, and it just doesn't seem like the world works that way anymore. So I think there was some concern raised last year about the idea of a part owner of the Raiders being allowed access to production meetings and other teams' practices and stuff like that. There's still going to be some restrictions on what he can and can't do there, but they are apparently relaxing them a bit. I think, players, it's quite something to see him out there. Like if I'm at the same game and you can see him out there in the middle of the field talking to players, he's a presence,
Yeah,
and there's no
yeah.
question about it. And people love to go up and talk to him. So I think players can get maybe a little starstruck sometimes with that. But in terms of, I'm sure there is plenty of grousing in some front offices about, why does this guy who helps operate one of our rival teams get access on a level that we don't grant to executives with other teams, or even the media in a lot of cases. So yeah, it'll be interesting to watch it going forward, and if someone does raise a stink, or if we see evidence that maybe some of those conflicts of interest
100%.
might be seeping into the coverage, which we didn't, I don't think, last year. But yeah, it's I'm kind of like you, but I'm also kind of like a dinosaur in that respect.
I'm becoming more and more of a dinosaur too, Dan. Dan, it's been so great to have you back on Talk Sport for the second time. We'll keep doing this throughout the NFL season, hopefully week 1, everything at Talk Sport, Talk Sport USA. Follow, subscribe, follow Dan on Twitter. Dan, have a great, I know it never ends once it starts, so have a great season. Yeah. Best of luck, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks in London. Thank you very much, man.
Thanks, Brian.
Cheers.